Ultimately, there's never been a bad time to talk about Bruno. It's the most broken rule since the first rule of Fight Club.
We don't talk about Bruno.
2 seconds later.
With a few awkward exceptions, that, like Bruno, we don't talk about. Disney movies have a knack for being timeless. Since they started using computers instead of cells and papers, they haven't lost that magic, as we're still prone to bursting into You're Welcome, or Let It Go, or We Don't Talk About Bruno. Since we're talking about Bruno, let's talk some more about the detailed work that went into Encanto. I'm Joey C. Let's go!
Flowers.
Sometimes, someone either in a movie or in real life will use a well-known quote to make a certain point quickly or to make a connection to the thing being quoted. What you may or may not know, musicians and composers quote each other as well. In their music, jazz musicians would play a figure from another player's solo to build off or just as a nod to the performance they liked. There's also a lot of musical quotes throughout the music of Encanto. Lin-Manuel Miranda had a chance to write the music for a Disney movie. He was gonna go all in. The one most people are familiar with is Bruno's nod to Let It Go. Not just repeating the titular line, but including the opening piano figure, or how he adopted a figure from Under the Sea in another song. There's also a nod to the musical pioneer Carlos Santana. The chorus of We Don't Talk About Bruno has a figure built around one found in Santana's 90s hit, Smooth. Maribel ends the song with a sustained burn on the same note as the Hamilton song Burn. In What Else Can I Do? Contains the words deeply, madly, truly, while she's making more wild or savage gardens. Like the Savage Garden song Truly, Madly, Deeply, this isn't the first time the quote was used by Miranda. It also appears in the Heights song The Club. Let's talk about the form known as the Madrigal. Coming from the late Renaissance to early Baroque, a madrigal is a choral arrangement where multiple voices sing at once, but instead in harmony, the voices are in counterpoint, a nifty way of saying doing their own thing. Musicals use a variation of that frequency, generally to indicate two or more characters moving in different directions. The family madrigal, just like the madrigal form, has family members that move to their own tune but come together to form the whole. Just for good measure, We Don't Talk About Bruno ends with a madrigal used in musicals. It's hard to keep a secret in town with the madrigals, with Dolores hearing everything. Even the elusive Bruno has a cousin listening in to make sure everything was groovy. So when Maribel's father finds out she's seen Bruno's vision, they decide not to tell anyone. Dolores, of course, hears the whole thing. That's when Dad mutters a word that translates to Wednesday. Augustin is voiced by Wilmer Valderrama, who let his secret out in a tweet, for those of us who are not native Spanish speakers. Turns out the word he mutters is a substitute word when people can't swear, like saying fudge instead of dropping an F-bomb, or shoot when we mean something else. The word he utters that I can't pronounce is used as a substitute word for that word in Spanish, because they sound so similar. Given how prone he is to bee stings, he probably says Wednesday a lot.
I don't sound like that. I don't sound like that.
I don't sound like that. I don't sound.
There's a more kid-friendly reference to common sayings and phrases. When Bruno runs across the part of the house that's being patched up, he quickly gives a quick sana sana culata de rana. This is the first half of a rhyme that finishes si no sana hoy, tu sana mañana. Look at me, I can speak Spanish. That translates to heal, heal, little tail of a frog. If you don't heal today, you'll heal tomorrow. It's a rhyme parents repeat to their children when they get hurt as a way to comfort them.
It gets worse because you won't tell me what's wrong.
Nothing's wrong!
Musical quotes from other songs or soloists is a way to wink at influences. But in a musical, they're actually an important narrative tool. Each of the songs has to be both distinct and feel connected to the rest of the musical. Encanto makes pretty healthy use of that technique. In the family madrigal, we first hear the Bruno rule. Isabella's melody in We Don't Talk About Bruno is repeated this time by Maribel in What Else Can I Do? All of you, as you would expect, brings a lot of the music together. Maribel starts with the same melody as the family madrigal. Fittingly, Camilo revisits the melody of We Don't Talk About Bruno, asking if they're now talking about We Don't Talk About Bruno. Isabel now revisits her part in We Don't Talk About Bruno. Luisa revisits a melody from Surface Pressure. That song does not make me cry. Who told you songs make me cry? It turns out Encanto gives us a hint about where in Colombia Encanto is and why it's so hard to find by anybody else. When Mirabel decides to break from the valley after blowing up on her grandma, she ends up in the same colorful river where Alma lost Pedro and gained the magical candle. This place seems magical and surreal, the kind of place that could only happen in animation, except it does actually exist. Cano Cristales is a river in Colombia that is sometimes referred to as the River of Five Colors or the Rainbow River. It is also considered one of the most beautiful places on Earth. To keep it that way, access to the river is heavily monitored, with only a handful of permits given each year. Otherwise, there'd be hundreds of Instagram influencers just trampling all over the place. As Mirabel makes the rounds with her family, trying to sort out first if there is a problem with the magic, and then why there's a problem with the magic, she visits her sisters and her family. She only gets a few clues on why it's happening and how Bruno is a part of it. But what she also discovers is that her sisters are barely holding it together, which is actually the problem with the magic. Almost tight grip on it and the pressure she places on the family. But as she goes through the family, she starts to see them as they are. To signal that bit of empathy, Mirabel starts to adapt the various dance moves of the person singing. Oddly, that's the way I dance. Just do whatever the person in front of me is doing and hope they don't do a flip or something.
This is called helping, and I'm not in the way. You are.
Alma's pressure was both constant and subtle. Maybe the best example is when Alma talks to Isabella about her up-and-coming nuptials with Mariano. She says, "Such a fine young man with our perfect Isabella." To make sure she is indeed perfect, Alma pulls the white flower out of her hair that contrasts the rest of her flowers that are red. That is all part of her belief that they have to be perfect to earn the miracle they've received. It also signals the fact that Isabella is losing control of her powers before she sprouts a cactus. Not only is it not a rose, it's probably something no one in the town has seen since they've never been to a desert. For bonus points, note Dolores' face when Alma says that line. She sadly looks into the ground because she's in love with Mariano. There's actually a number of tells throughout the movie, like the similarly sad face she has after telling Isabella he's gonna propose. Despite opening with a song that's literally a who's who of the Madrigal family, even titled The Family Madrigal, there's a lot. There's 3 sisters, 2 cousins, and 2 older sisters, and their brothers who we're not allowed to talk about, but we end up talking a lot about them. With that in mind, there's a bit of a way to allow the audience to keep track of who's who, at least for those who see color properly. Kinda have to take people's word on this. 2 of the colors look the same most of the time, and I don't know, I've never seen one of them. The weather-generating aunt to Mirabel has a family that wears warm colors like orange, red, and yellow. Mirabel's family wears cooler colors like blue, green, and purple. I'll be honest, I don't know how warm and cool apply to colors, and I also don't know the difference between blue and purple, so take that how you will. If you've ever written anything just for fun, you know that the worst part is having to come up with names. They all sound so stupid until they don't, but you have to kiss a lot of frog names before you get to the one. The easiest way to just pick a name and get on with your story is to find something symbolic in the name. And there's a lot of that in Encanto. Mirabel loosely means wondrous beauty, which is sweet. Don't use that as a pickup line on a Mirabel though. She's heard it, and probably enough people singing the family Madrigal. But wait, there's more. Most people shortened her name to Mira, which means look, and she's also the only Madrigal with glasses on. And keeping with that theme, she eventually sees her sisters and grandmother. The big tension of Encanto before we learn that the magic is fading and Mirabel's fate is to tear it down and rebuild it as the new keeper of magic, or at least the keeper in training, is little Antonio's ceremony where he gets his gift. Mirabel was the last to go through this ceremony, only to have the door disappear and leave her living in the nursery for the next 10 years. Having shared a room with young Antonio, he's the one family member she doesn't need a song revealing his inner self to know. She's so hip on what Antonio is about, she inadvertently predicts his gift when she gives him a stuffed animal as a parting gift. Antonio is named after Saint Anthony, who is the patron saint of, you guessed it, animals. And maybe even Mom saw this coming.
Thank you. Oh, it's nothing.
One of the big tragedies that the town holds Bruno responsible for is that he predicted a woman's goldfish would die. Is that predicting? At this point, quickly dying goldfish is how we teach kids about mortality. It's a pet so disposable they would give them out in plastic bags at fairs. A quick Google search tells me that this is still a thing. Huh. Anyways, aside from being the most predictable thing that Bruno predicted, there was an ominous foretelling of this tragedy looming in the woman's name. Mrs. Pez Muerto. Spanish speakers are way ahead of us here. Pez is Spanish for fish, and of course Muerto is Spanish for dead. She was always gonna kill her fish. And also, it's a goldfish. You're really gonna support an exile over the death of your goldfish? Just doesn't make sense.
And that's why coffee's for grown-ups.
While we're talking about We Don't Talk About Bruno, one of his drastic predictions was a little ironic. He predicts bad weather at his sister's wedding, the one whose mood affects the weather. This worries her so much she does in fact cause it to rain. Bruno later explains that it wasn't a prediction. He saw that his sister was barely holding it together. During the reenactment of that fateful day, the wedding guests open their umbrellas. In order, there's a trio that opens a yellow, blue, and red umbrella, the three colors of the Colombian flag.
What are you doing?
It turns out that Bruno was with his family the whole time, including sneaking around when people sing songs about not wanting him and holing up on the other side of the dining room wall. He's even been able to keep an eye on the family when they're in the kitchen, which is a lot. The hole that he peeks through is a crack in the wall where his family tree is painted, very symbolic to how his departure has left his family fractured. Bruno's visions obviously got him in a lot of trouble, mostly because his visions are of bummers. It's not like there's a lottery in the village to win or something. The one that pushes things over the edge is when he saw a vision of his niece destroying Casita. Or not. The vision changed depending on the angle of view. Not wanting to be blamed for destroying the family, with his prediction, he moved into the wall. He does cite the stairs in his room being a bit much, which, he's not wrong. They'll assume the prediction is an either-or situation. She either continues with the house, or she destroys it. Turns out, it was both. But before we get to Bruno and getting mad at Alma, Bruno's prediction was underway. Maribel ends the song looking for a miracle with a confident pose. Immediately after that, a piece of Casita falls to the ground. The pose she struck right before is how she is depicted in this prediction. It was already underway by the time she found Bruno.
You have no gift.
Thanks.
Luisa's eye twitch is the first indication that Maribel is onto something with her concerns about the state of the family's magic. Or at least she thinks she does. It turns out that her bigger issue was having to be the strong one all the time. She's really doing all the heavy lifting, not just for the family, but for the town. It's a lot, and she's not really allowed to show weakness. And so, as the song goes, under the surface, the pressure is starting to get to her. She runs through a lot of stories of legendary strength to remind everyone that while these characters were extremely strong, it was also a source of strife for them, as they were sent to do some intense tasks. The most obvious nod was fellow Disney star and Greek myth, Hercules, including a design for Cerberus from the animated movie being used here again. At one point, she's up between two columns that crumble under the pressure. While it looks like a continuation of Greek myths, it actually hints at another mystical strongman, Samson. While Maribel is singing about her amazing family and avoiding answering the question about her gifts, she ends up strolling around the little village that has popped up around the magical family, which is teeming with life, mostly preparing for Antonio's door ceremony. But there are also some who are playing a game called Tejo that was invented in Colombia. Essentially, it's like cornhole, but with a name that doesn't make my inner 12-year-old giggle. Instead of a hole, they're trying to get a disc on or near a pipe. For added coolness, they put a pack of gunpowder under the pipe, so if you hit it, it explodes. If cornhole involved explosions, I would play it way more. There's a lot of representation of the family, which makes sense. If there was a family of magically gifted people providing most of what a village needs, stands to reason they'd get a mural or two. There's a little bit of extra branding that comes when the family comes together for a family photo that doesn't include a dejected Maribel. I get it, Maribel. If I'm not personally invited, I tend to think I'm not invited. She later joins the family gathering in the center. Being short compared to most of the family, she is only 15. That means there's a dip in the middle. That means that if you trace over the top of everyone, it makes an M. M for Madrigal. That might just be a coincidence.
He's more than just a logo, more than just an internet meme.
Openings are key. Everyone's favorite part of Up happens in the first 5 minutes. Encanto opens up on a black screen with someone saying, "Open your eyes" in Spanish. This foreshadows one of the major themes of the movie, of people actually seeing what's going on around them, including with those they love. This happens to be exactly how the 1997 movie, Open Your Eyes, starts. The similarities stop there, though. The movie is about someone recovering from reconstructive surgery after an accident that happens shortly after he meets someone new. Each of the Madrigals have a depiction of them on it along with the design associated with their gift. The only two with their eyes open are Dolores and Bruno, the ones whose gift involves perception. They're also the ones that see the problems the family face, while the rest of the family tries to ignore them and retain Alma's standard of perfection. Ladies and gentlemen and everybody else in between, you made it to the end of the video. What did you think of Encanto this time around? It was quite fun revisiting it. Let us know if we missed anything in the comments below, and as always everybody, thanks for watching.